Hey, I'm Shy Fox, and in this video, I'm going to take you through what was going through my head and what my art process was for this anime piece of Sakura. The inspiration for creating this was to make a no pressure and fun piece for practicing my anime style. I think it's a good idea to go into a piece thinking about specifically what it is you want to get out of it by practicing something specific like line art rather than trying to accomplish everything in one. That being said, just by doing a finished piece, you will be, practicing all these things, but how you choose to focus your attention will help you grow in certain areas, and we can't realistically expect ourselves to focus on improving all areas of being a digital artist. I decided I'd focus on creating an anime portrait with a good composition, create interesting lighting, use it as an opportunity to practice my line art, and make beautiful and detailed anime eyes. These were the things I wanted to focus on, as well as what I felt inspired to work on, as opposed to focusing on improving other things like my coloring style or the way I paint hair, for example. I will note that the hair was probably the main thing I wasn't that happy with in the end, but I'll get into that in a moment why that was. Toss a like my way and subscribe if you want to see more of my videos like this one, teaching how I create my pieces, thoughts behind the creation process, and to see my other digital art tutorials. I started out by sketching the head, no exact plan, but I had my references of Sakura ready and some anime style references to use to make the sketch. My first goal was to sketch a head and face that I liked using the Loomis method, which I always use by the way, starting with the head shape and placing in the eyes and facial features. As I make this sketch, I make adjustments to things by using the lasso tool and then transforming. I'll use the distortion, rotation, scale up or down, and other transform tools to make the changes. You might wonder how I know what changes need to be made, and the answer to that is when I stare at the sketch I've got so far and I feel like something is off, I'll try to figure out what it is and do a bit of a trial and error to fix it. For example, if I see the eyes are too low on the face, I may try raising them up, seeing if that fixes the issue and continue. If it's worse, I of course change it back. So this trial and error strategy has really helped me improve my sketches, and over time, as I become more experienced artist, I can usually make these tweaks for improvement more quickly and successfully as I've developed my sense of art sight. And by art sight, I mean I can pick out the issues easily and know how to fix them. This is a skill you develop over time and can't really fast track developing your sense of sight for art, if that makes sense. So if you want another reason as to why to follow the advice of practice, 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 I've got this. You'll develop your sense of art sight for things like placement of eyes or features, their size, where they go on the face, how long or short the jaw should be, etc. Seeing when something is incorrect and being able to follow that up with knowing how to fix it is a skill we all must develop. This will come with time. I still feel myself improving my sense of art sight. I felt that my lines would look best thinner rather than thicker and took the opportunity to add more details using line. I tend to add most of my details in coloring stages, and so it's a bit more of a challenge for me to add lines in to show detail. This I feel mainly happened in the hair, which I liked in general, the look of it. Speaking to how I make my lines look smooth and clean, I've made a number of specific tutorials on my channel teaching how I do this, but in general I use the stabilizer in the program, turn that up quite high, and then I tweak my lines using the vector tools. The vector and align tools in Clip Studio Paint is something I want to specifically say I love about this program. It makes drawing line art so much easier and more fun, rather than just relying on my own steady hand. I've noticed how much steadier my hand is though since I started drawing way back. I have a lot more control than from when I got started, and I owe that to practice as well. And just for your information, this entire project took me 6 hours of arting with my pen to the tablet, taking out the many times I had to stop. So 6 hours over the course of a few days. I also created this on my iPad Pro. I use both PC and iPad to do my paintings in Clip Studio Paint. So what you're seeing here now is my stage that comes after, in this case, line art. In my semi-realistic artworks, I'll do this as well, except there's no line art phase at all. But what I'm doing is I'm planning the values of the piece. I'm planning shadows and I'm planning highlights. And this is, I find, a really, really important step for making an artwork that kind of like pops. If I'm thinking about lighting, and that was kind of one of the focuses of this piece, and I get a real kick out of trying to make interesting lighting concepts. So with that in mind, I find it's good to just like plan this out as a whole before even getting to the coloring bit. If the values, as in the shadows and the highlights, don't look good, then it kind of almost doesn't really matter what the colors do, because I just feel that is so much more fundamentally important to a piece than even color. Color's kind of like an after the fact sort of thought for me in my process. I guess I shouldn't say after the fact, it's just not as important as values. So I plan out my values. I like to see how they're gonna look without color, and then when they're done, you can see that, you know, I go in and I put the colors over top of the values. I use like a filter layer, one of the filter types, color filter, to put that over top and add color in. And speaking of the piece as a whole, when thinking about, you know, planning those values, making those shadows and highlights look good for the whole piece, I do that with the color too. So when I'm going in and doing the colors, I'm thinking about, does the color of the hair look good with the color of the pink of the outfit, basically. And when I was painting it, I could see that the pink was a little bit too saturated. It didn't look good with the other colors already existing in the piece. And so that could mean a couple different things. Maybe I'm going to turn up the saturation of the hair. Maybe I'm going to turn down the saturation of the, you know, fabric. So it, you know, you make those decisions as a whole instead of being like, the outfit is pink, select random pink color from color palette and put it on. I'm actually planning while putting them in, like, this pink looks good with the brown of this hair, which looks good with the skin color that we picked here. So making sure that the colors are actually working together. And a common mistake that I see a lot is too much saturation, so making sure that it doesn't feel too saturated. But these are things that I tweak as I go. I'm fixing the colors of the layers as I go. At this point in the piece, I'm working on the eyes. I had felt that the base colors that I'd laid down over top of my values working together looked great, so I decided the first area I wanted to render is the eyes. For the most part, I mean, I'd kind of rendered the skin as well, but really focus on the eyes here. And you know, they're a lot of fun, so eyes are always an opportunity to have fun. They are so important to do well, because when you look at a piece of a portrait, you're drawn typically to the eyes of the character first. So knowing that they're that important, you know, I want to take my time, and so I did spend a fair bit of time doing the eyes here. And I tried some different things, like some new things. I wanted to blur the edges of the iris. I'd seen that done before, and of course I take inspiration from other art pieces that I've seen. I'm not the first one to do that. It isn't even my own original idea to do something like that, and you know, I really like the way it looks, so that is probably something. First time doing it, you'll see me do it, and probably a lot of future pieces as well. I had mentioned that the hair was one of the things in this piece that I wasn't quite as happy with in the end. I followed my typical process of at least just starting by putting in some shadows into the areas that I think would have shadows. I decided I'd experiment with a watercolor brush, which would have some kind of strandy feel. I don't know if that's the word to describe that with, but just some more realism, more realistic of a brush to bring that in and see how that would look. And it's not that the idea was bad. I think I just wasn't really happy with somewhat placement of shadows, and I tried to go back in and do a couple things to like improve it. And ultimately I found that the one thing I did that maybe helped it a bit was adding in those not so realistic looking shadows, but more your anime type of shading that you'd expect with sections blocked in. And that kind of like maybe helped a bit, but I still wasn't like fully happy with it. So in another piece, another time, I will make hair the focus. Hair was not the focus of this. It kind of just ended up how it ended up. And I think it's also okay to do a piece and I just said, oh, well, it is what it is. Might not be perfect. Somebody else might look at this and be like, I really like the way you did the hair in this. I mean, it's not that it's bad. It just maybe isn't my preference. I kind of like made the most of it. But I will be trying different strategies for hair in the future, do it differently. It kind of has this great contrast in it that came out well, and there's, you know, different values throughout it that I think looks good, but overall, this shading strategy or coloring, rendering strategy probably wouldn't be something I try in the future, but I think that's the key here too. And the point I want to make is try things, try stuff. And maybe it won't be what you expected, and maybe you won't even like it. I don't like it that much here. That's okay. Call it done, like move on. You can't spend forever on one piece. So, you know, I put 6 hours into this piece. That's still a long time. And I don't want to spend, you know, that much longer on it. I want to move on and do another one. So I think that's something I have done well in general, is I just go, okay, like it is what it is. It's not perfect. And of course, don't beat yourself up. I didn't beat myself up. I was like, I tried something, maybe not my fave, but this is how it turned out, and I'm okay with it. You may have noticed that I mess with the lighting throughout the creation of the piece. Lighting is something I'll be tweaking and changing right up till the end. I know I put in my initial values, but I go in and I find like the correction layer tools, and I specifically pick out, I think it's tone, and then I'll play with it. I don't even truly, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, don't truly know how that tool works. I just like drag it around and just experiment. I do a lot of trial and error. And as I've grown to understand my painting program, I kind of know how these tools work. And with that in mind, I kind of like can preemptively decide like, oh, okay, I'd really like to darken up the character, make her pop against the background. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was darkening her up a bit and lightening up the background, creating that contrast. And, you know, by the end of the piece, you'll kind of see the lighting in the end. But that lighting is definitely something that I'm constantly tweaking as I go to, you know, see the piece as a whole. When I was a beginner artist, seeing the piece as a whole was just like, I want to say like not a thing. My level was basic back then, so I wouldn't be thinking about how the lighting looked for the whole piece. And it was right at about this stage I was done. The piece wasn't done, but I was. I just like didn't want to continue it. I wanted it to be done all on its own, but of course I couldn't bear to let it be finished at this point. The neck and bottom half of her that you can see really needed to be rendered in, but I did grind it out for the last hour and a half or whatever time it was at this point to get it done. Sometimes, you know, your heart's in it in the beginning, you're all inspired, and then, you know, you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, I see where this is going. I see approximately how it's going to turn out, and I'm feeling kind of done. So sometimes you'll get to that point where it is a grind. In fact, art much of the time can feel like a grind. I mean, for me, the hardest part is always getting started, and I did stop and start while creating this piece many times. I have a son, so I have to take care of him. So stopping and starting is rough. Breaking that focus is hard, and trying to start up again every single time is hard. Previously to this video, I'd made a video about a year ago about, you know, how I draw semi-realistic art, and it was an anime girl, and I remember I drew that piece in one sitting. That was a 5-hour piece in one sitting. My focus was not broken, and I just went for it. So if you're somebody who's got like a 5-hour period of time and you can do that, like that's great. I definitely can, but my life doesn't really allow for that anymore. So I'm facing a different challenge now, unlike before. Many of the challenges that we face when we create art aren't just the things that we're experiencing with our hands and drawing and the program and our skills. A lot of the time it's that mental bit. So I'm giving you a bit of an insight into the mental piece of what I was struggling with, and it was the focus getting broken, and then trying to be motivated enough to get started again when I had to stop. Some final touches for the piece included, you know, making those last minute lighting tweaks, color tweaks, using those layer correction tools to do that. And then I added like some sparkles and did some changing of some of the actual color of the lines. Maybe you noticed that I painted over the lines that I had to, it created a bit more of a realistic feel, kind of definitely go in the direction of a little bit more realistic. I mean, caring about lighting as much as I did is definitely putting it in the realm of a more realistic type of anime. I hope that you got something insightful out of this video. If you did, maybe like and subscribe. I'll have more videos like this on my channel. You can check those out. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.